Alert Media.
Hello, my fellow Dreadites. Today I am joined by CJ Leede, and I'm super excited for this episode. CJ is the Octavia E. Butler award-winning and Bram Stoker Award-nominated author of Maeve and American Rapture, which just came out in paperback on September 16th. And in my opinion, CJ is one of the most exciting authors working in the horror space at the moment. CJ, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, and thank you for your kind words. It really is, it's like a cool thing to have a paperback coming out because you get this like total resurgence of like love on the book, and it's like a year later.
Right. And it's been at the top of my TBR list, but with other commitments that we made, I hadn't gotten around to it. So this is the perfect timing for us. In fact, I was at Half Price Books with my toddler yesterday shopping for Nightmare Before Christmas merch, and we saw your book out on display. And my wife was like, "Oh my God, synchronicity."
That's awesome. Oh, 'tis the
Yeah.
season too.
Right. Yeah. Just
Finally.
the perfect time to be a horror author or a horror content creator. This is where we shine.
The best.
So, tell me a little bit about American Rapture. It was released in paperback this week. What's the book about at a high level, just for people who haven't read it yet?
Yeah, so all my books are really about place. So this one is my Midwest novel. It follows a very, very sheltered 16-year-old Catholic girl in the Midwest who starts to come into the beginnings of like a sexual awakening, and at the same time America explodes with this violent, sexually propagating viral epidemic, and she has to cross the state of Wisconsin where she lives to reach her family and like hopefully stay alive, and also grapple with all these feelings of sin, shame, guilt, and burgeoning sexuality in this like really insane unfolding hellscape of America.
Yeah, and just a normal Wednesday.
Yeah.
Right. I
Casual.
went, right. I went to Catholic school, and you captured that vibe of repression and guilt so perfectly. And I'm going to ask you more about this later, but I just had to say it right now because it's such a big part of the book. It was just pitch perfect with all of the guilt and all of the repression and all of the anxieties surrounding puberty in a religious environment. But
Thank you.
oh yeah, for sure. I'm curious though. Tell me a little bit about yourself as a writer. How did you get started writing, and how did you find yourself here today with a paperback release of your novel?
Yeah, this is kind of like a weird story that I always try to make as short as possible, but uh when I thought I was going to be a career academic, I wanted to be a medievalist. And when I was in my last semester of undergrad, I took a writing elective, and then I graduated, and what I had written in that class ended up getting forwarded to like a few people in the industry who then requested full manuscripts from me. And I was like, what does that even mean? Um, so I very quickly wrote a draft of what, later turned into like a decade later, American Rapture. It was terrible. It was like the worst book ever, really bad. I had no idea what I was doing. I ended up getting a revision request, but I didn't follow up with it. I had other plans. I was going to take some time off, hike, go back to school. And in my time off, I kept thinking back to that time writing, and I thought, man, like I really liked that. There was something about sitting down and like interacting with this world I was creating in that way that like really stuck with me. And so when I was going back to school, I thought, well, what if I just applied to writing school instead and see what happens? And I always say, like, obviously, you don't need to go to grad school to be a writer. You don't need to go to any school to be a writer at all. Like, it's just humans telling human stories. But that's what I ended up doing. And it was, for me, like the best decision of my life. I found my people, my partner, and I rewrote what is now American Rapture, probably like, I don't know, 12 to 16 times from a blank draft over like a 10-year period. And it took a long time to get it right.
That's wild. I can't imagine sitting with a project for that long, and it has to be so gratifying now.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing and what I think was meant to be about it is that in the book, like we have this 16-year-old protagonist. And to be honest, like I don't know that I could access a lot of those same feelings now in my 30s that I could when I was like 21, which is when I first wrote the early pages of this. And by the way, at that time, I thought it was like dystopian YA that I was writing because that's all the stuff I was reading, like YA fantasy. Um, and then, I had to kind of finish it, I think, in my 30s to do those adult voices and kind of like give their perspectives any kind of like uh real feeling. So it was actually a very cool thing. And in case that inspires anybody, whose book is taking a lot longer than you want it to, like maybe that's just ultimately in favor of the book. I don't know.
Honestly, though, I think that you do require perspective. It takes time. My background is in performance and theater, and I
Oh,
love that you said you
cool.
don't have to go to school because you don't need to go to school for
You
these. It
don't.
helps
Yeah.
in some ways, but yeah, we always say that a revival of a project, you need to be like 20 years out from Rent to do a good Rent revival to understand the context of the 90s
Yeah.
appropriately. I think you hit the nail on the head with that so hard. What draws you to horror as a genre? It's a broad genre, and you lean more towards the extreme side of horror, and I love that. That is one of my favorite places to find myself as a reader. What brings you into that?
Originally, so when I was in grad school, I was in a literary fiction program, and I thought maybe I wanted to write sci-fi fantasy. And or as they were saying at the time, because genre was so like, like the scary dirty word, magical realism, that was that was okay. So I was looking into doing magical realism, and a professor was like, hey, every story you've handed in is horror. And I said, there's no way, like I've never even read horror, I don't watch horror. And my professor was like, no, I think you're a horror writer. So I read my first Stephen King book in my like mid 20s, and it was amazing. My first one was Misery, and then Doctor Sleep, and then I read The Shining after Doctor Sleep. And which, by the way, is kind of a great way to do it. And I feel like probably very few people do it that way, but I kind of
Yeah.
it was really cool. Um, yeah, and then I read it and I was like, okay, this is it. This is all I want to be doing. And I think ultimately it just comes down to like I'm afraid of a lot. So it um makes sense to me to write down the scary stuff. And at the same time, like I think I'm a pretty literal thinker. And in my mind, it's like, okay, well, story is conflict, and conflict is like, what's the worst thing that can happen to these characters right now? And like horror is just logical extremes.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think that's really well said. You also mentioned that horror in your end notes, and I did read your end notes, but for folks who haven't had a chance yet, that horror is looking at the darkness. And I wonder, is there another function that you think horror might provide to readers outside of logical extremes and heightened stakes and heightened urgency? But is there another function that horror fulfills for you, or that you would hope it would fulfill for readers?
I think completely. Horror is such a broad umbrella, right? Like I think people have this preconceived notion that it's all the Terrifier or whatever, and a lot of it's the Terrifier, as it should be. Love it. But also a lot of it is like really kind of solemn grief horror or whatever. Like there's so many types, and I think in the same way that romance looks at, one type of relationship or one aspect of life or any other genre, it's like horror just looks at the fact that we live with mortality all the time. Like we live with death. It's a huge part of life. And I totally understand not wanting to engage with that, but I think there's a real freedom in engaging with it and a catharsis, and sort of it's such a safe arena reading a book that you're going to close at the end and walk away from, and it's a beautiful thing to kind of have a book hopefully kind of hold your hand through looking at the darkest scariest aspects of being a human being on earth and not knowing what comes after and all of that. So I love
Yeah.
it. I think it's very comforting ultimately.
Yeah, this is like a special interest topic of mine. We do editorials where we talk a lot about catharsis, and a lot of the viewers that we engage with talk about how maybe they have anxiety, and maybe approaching horror in a controlled manner or approaching anxiety in a controlled manner helps them deal with it in the field
Yeah.
when it pops up in real life. Yeah, it's a beautiful genre if you can get past the gnarliness.
Or embrace it.
Yeah, yeah, embrace the
Lean
gnarliness.
in.
It's going to be the new tagline for the show now.
Oh yeah.
So just looking at the landscape of this novel, it is post-apocalyptic, and the timing on it probably couldn't have been better, a few years out from our own sort of virus and things like that. And when I picked up the novel, I was like, I wonder if this had it played into the genesis of it. But when I found out that it took you a decade, I was like, oh, maybe not. So I have to ask, what inspired you to write a post-apocalyptic novel?
I mean, really, I think it was that sort of like dystopian YA, like this sort of
Yeah.
like um also I don't think I've said this in any interviews. I don't really think about it too much, but when I was a teen, I got like really bad Lyme disease and it was undiagnosed for like 10 years. And at one point I had to leave school. It was like a whole thing. I couldn't walk for like a year. And so I think like illness has always kind of been just like I mean, obviously it's a fear and it's something that like being incapacitated by illness is something that makes a lot of sense to me to look at. But when I was first writing this, it wasn't what gave me the idea. It was actually right after I started working on it was that Ebola outbreak back in whatever 20,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that would have been, 2014,
2000.
2013.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that was kind of wild. And I remember reading The Hot Zone and it scared the shit out of me. That's the scariest book ever, by the way, if you ever want to be just like so terrified.
The Hot Zone?
Yeah, it's
I've
really,
not read it.
really gnarly about, and it's, yeah, yeah, definitely recommend if you want to be like scared. Uh, like real life scared a little bit. Yeah, and then COVID happened, and what I got wrong or didn't anticipate was the internet of it all. Like the internet really wasn't the same in 2013, 2014, as it was in 2020. Um, and also like forums and also the ways in which like people kind of turned on each other online. Like that was something I wasn't anticipating. Um,
Yeah.
but the vaccine pushback, all that was always in the book. That was
Yeah.
always
It
like a
was
big part of it.
it was strangely accurate in a lot of ways. And until I got to the end notes, I had assumed that this was a response to it, but a little bit of a precognition there out of you, I think.
I know. I'm like, should I start writing like happier books?
No, I will request that you not, because I've loved everything you've written so far, and I don't know that either one of them is happy. Hopeful in some ways. And although I always say with Mayfly, and no spoilers here, I was like, that's the best possible ending. If it had ended any other way, that would be so bad for everyone involved if it had ended any other way. Um,
I agree. Also, I do a thing where in all three of my books, even my third one coming up, I kind of like say exactly what's going to happen, or like in the first like 1 to 10 pages of the book.
hmm,
Hopefully in a way that, still keeps you guessing, but like it's always there.
yeah,
Because I
yeah.
just think, it almost doesn't matter. Like I think there are kind of no spoilers in life. It's like it's all going to the same end. It's just kind of about how we get there, kind of thing.
I was just going to say American Rapture specifically is all about the journey, 100%. And it's all about the relationships along the way too. I think found family is something that's a huge part of this book. And I wonder if you have any additional context or any sort of like broadly speaking about these relationships, because they are very complex and there's a lot of conflicting alliances or conflicting desires in these relationships. I don't know if you could speak broadly to those.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad. I think like complex shifting relationships are like what it's all about. And I personally love reading books where the secondary characters are like really interesting and each have their own sort of like wants and wounds and those might be conflicting. Hopefully they are conflicting, right? For like story. And I think like at the end of the day like I love people and I see mean, we're in very divisive times that I'm
Hmm.
not going to talk about. But what I will say is like overall, I try to always see everyone's perspective as much as I am able to. And that can be difficult in life, but in a book, it's easy to do because you can really kind of sit down with each character and see the world through their eyes and say, well, what would make you think this way and what would make you act this way? And ultimately, through that lens, like you can feel a lot of compassion for characters who might be antagonistic to your protagonist and also to like what the reader would want to have happen. So um I think I don't know, I think as writers like we're just trying to understand this sort of human experience and kind of work through it together. So does that answer,
Yeah.
did that kind of
100%.
okay.
Yeah, no, I think that was spot on. And I think that horror, and I talk about this a lot. This is my other special interest in horror, is that horror requires of us more or different empathy than other genres. And my listeners are probably sick of hearing this, but it requires cross-gender identification. It requires you to put yourself in a circumstance that you're probably never going to find yourself in to go along on that ride. And what I think this book, American Rapture, does extremely well is every single character that we come across, and we start small and we expand out to a larger band of folks traveling with us, uh, it made every loss hurt. I cared about every single character, and a human or inhuman, non-human, animal. I just, everything in the book, every character was relatable, and every loss was just devastating. So kudos to you on that. Everyone was fully developed.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's like by the time you finish writing one, especially that book took me the longest by far. It's like you're like, oh, what am I gonna do without these people in my brain? But
Right. For sure.
maybe they'll come back.
My,
Oh well,
I hope
the ones
so.
that
Yeah, I would love to see it, honestly. There's so many, this is a complete story, but there are some open questions, and it leaves us with a sense of hope for sure. And we'll talk about themes a little bit later on. I don't want to dive too much into that right this second. I have to ask, this is a larger canvas. We're painting in a larger world essentially than Maeve Fly. Was your writing process, and the answer is obvious after our conversation now, but was your writing process different, like fundamentally speaking, than with Maeve Fly?
yeah, Maeve, I think I wrote the whole book. I can't I want to say I wrote the first draft in less than 3 months, and then with like an edit round with my manager and agent, I think in total it was 5 months before we sent it out. Something like crazy. Which obviously versus 10 years is a big difference.
Yeah.
Um, Part of that was I had written, there's another book I wrote that's in the drawer, which is like my vampire trucker novel, which may or may not make an appearance one day. But so Maeve was my third book. And at that time, I was just like, screw it, I'm never getting anything published. And so Maeve was really like, I was feeling very like out of power in my life. I'd lost people. The world was, it was like 2020 October, where there was a big election coming up. I had just driven from California to New York to see family. It was still kind of mask time. And also, uh, at the time we were driving, we now have a more appropriate road trip vehicle, but we were driving kind of a flashy red car with a California plate. And like the response we were getting in some of these places that I had driven through a million times and stayed in a million times, like I could just feel a volatility brewing that was felt new. And so I felt very out of power. So that was Maeve. It was just kind of like a bit of a scream into the night. And then by the time I rewrote American Rapture, it was like, okay, we are living with some of these uh really difficult realities around us. And that's part of our landscape right now in this extremely divided nation, and also one that uh, keeps bringing religion back to the forefront. And so it was all kind of there. And it definitely influenced everything. But at the end of the day, I just wanted it to be like Sophie's story and really the story of this one issue, which is like it took me until I was in my 30s and it took me 10 years of writing a book to be able to not carry around what I view as some pretty like useless and hindering emotions, which are those sort of like sin, shame, guilt. And
Yeah.
life is just so hard already. And I just think it's so unnecessary. And also is really, I mean, it's just a way to subdue people to keep them in that space. And I think we don't need it.
I completely agree with you on that. And I think that is a really strong element in the book. And, there's a lot of loss of innocence and frankly, loss of virginity. And I am probably not the right reviewer to unpack all of those themes as a 42-year-old man. Uh, but I will say that,
Humans, you know.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. But Sophie feels vastly different from Maeve, and that's to your credit as a writer. And I got to bracket this. If you're a Disney adult, you need to read Maeve Fly. Like, if you haven't read it yet, you will have a blast with the pieces on the chessboard in that book. But in American Rapture, it feels like we're looking at the dichotomy of America, how we can have the rise of fundamentalism with the hypersexualization of pop culture at the same time. Is there something more than what you've just said that you would like the audience to maybe leave with when they close that book?
Yeah. I mean, it I don't think it's really like a spoiler. It's a spoiler to Sophie who doesn't get it until the very end. And I guess I spoiled that for you, but I think I just think the concept of sin,
Mm,
uh we are just humans living in human bodies and doing our best. And if you love other humans, and if everything's consensual and kind and loving and doesn't hurt anyone, and you're just putting more love into the world, then it can look any way you want it to. And I can't believe we still have to have that conversation in 2025, but here we are.
right? Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that. And I love how sensitively, delicately, and non-judgmentally and non-performatively you handle the queer themes in the book. Like one character it was like, yeah, I had a couple of girlfriends and a boyfriend, and like just like that's what it was, and it was just so honest and so truthful. And personally, I left with a message of hope and freedom and empowerment, and maybe I was advised to have a healthy dose of moderation.
Love it.
Yeah, and so I think unpacking that
Yeah.
baggage is so important. And again, coming from a background of having done 12 years of Catholic school and not being Catholic myself, so thrust into that and having it put upon me, really, really honest and accurate look at all of those sorts of themes.
Yeah,
I
that's
found
fascinating.
absolutely, absolutely. I found something fun when I was researching your Instagram, and that is that you have playlists for
Hmm.
both Maeve Fly and American Rapture. And I'll be honest with you, we have a spooky car rides list that our toddler loves and that I also love. And a lot of that list comes from Mayfly, outside of some like Midnight Syndicate haunted house music and some of the band Ghost. I'm wondering, and thank you for that, by the way, but I'm wondering how much music plays a part in your writing process.
Oh my gosh, so much. Well, first of all, I love to hear that. That makes me so happy that you're listening to any of these songs. But I grew up, my mom and stepdad are, one of them still a musician, but they both were when I was growing up, and all of their friends were musicians. And I grew up in Austin, Texas, back when like you could be like a musician full time, and that was like a really comfortable, awesome life. And so that was kind of the world I grew up in. And my parents took me to shows like every other day. And so yeah, it's been a huge part of my life. I love music trivia. I love kind of shaping each book around the playlist and vice versa. I usually will find kind of like some big like scaffolding scenes for the book. You know, the scenes that I know are going to be like the really big ones, and usually I'll like kind of find a song that makes sense with those scenes. And then I run a lot, so I'll just play the playlists on repeat for like months, years while I'm working on this stuff, and just kind of like let the songs play and build the scenes and the moments and the dialogue in my head as I listen over time. So it's very cool to share it ultimately and eventually. I share like a pared down one with readers.
I'm so grateful. I can't wait to dig into them and see how many I missed from Mayfly for sure. I also think music has a very similar function to horror in allowing us to confront complex emotions in a safe way. So it's just interesting to me. I had to ask the question
Yeah, and
whether
in the case of in particular American Rapture, like when I was growing up, my big idols were like Alanis Morissette, Tori Amos, Fiona Apple, Sinead O'Connor. Like there were these women who were out there saying things that like I couldn't believe they were brave enough to say. I mean, they were very outspoken about a lot of these themes, like whatever, 20 years ago, 30, I don't even know now what decade we're in. But in the 90s it was a big deal, and it I think made me realize a lot of possibility. And so I kind of hoped with this book to give that feeling of like what it felt like to be like a kid listening to like Sinead O'Connor, like kind of speaking out against certain things or grappling with certain things, or any of them.
I absolutely love that. And Fiona Apple's like quarantine album was like, oh, right? Yeah, you
Everything
have
she's
some
ever put out is perfect.
100%. You have some good taste, that's for sure. Um, I know you said you grew up in Texas, and Texas is known for not Austin specifically, but broadly speaking, being fairly conservative, and that's cool. But I wonder what your experience with religion growing up was like,
Yeah. So
if you're cool with talking about
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. I grew up a lot less sheltered than Sophie. I was not like a sheltered kid, I should say. Sophie's extremely sheltered. So that's one huge difference. And that was also part of why I wasn't ready to write a Texas book yet. And I wanted it to be somewhere in the middle of the country, but that had its really own distinct identity. I ended up spending a lot of time in Wisconsin and thought this was perfect. So sidebar on that. But I went to church every week, and what did I do? Sunday school, choir, youth group for a while. Those all those things. But not Catholic school. I went to public school, which I loved. And I think again, being kind of a literal thinker, and probably leaning a certain way on certain scales of thinking types, I listened to everything I was taught in church and Sunday school, and I paid a lot of attention, and I took it um literally because I was a kid and because they were saying, the demons hear your every thought. Little girls are born into more sin than little boys. All of these, and they become the sort of building blocks of your life. They become very important. So I really was so scared all the time of any kind of thought that I had or question that I had surface in the quiet of my mind, actually having like really eternal repercussions, and also like repercussions that could affect people around me. I mean, it's just such like a sort of like complicated web of guilt and shame. And to me, I know so many people find solace and comfort in religion. But for me, for whatever reason, I only ever felt fear in church.
Mm.
And yeah, it scared the shit out of me. I also had this painting across from my bed where I slept. And again, I think like my parents thought, or my one of my parents thought it's like this is like comforting and nice, and uh but it was this like painting of Christ on the cross, and he's emaciated and he's bleeding, and it's like a black background. It was very dark, and the thorns, and I everything about it just terrified me. So
Yeah. Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that. There are ways that religion can be extremely beautiful, and there are ways that it can be very um, burdensome or repressive. And I had to ask that question because the Sophie's thought process was so authentic to thought processes that I'd seen in action growing up and that I had had myself. It's really good stuff.
that's frankly has been the coolest part of this, like putting this book out, is like realizing how many folks, and not just Catholic, like Um, I'll have readers reach out to me and be like, I grew up evangelical, I grew up Baptist, I grew up whatever, Pentecostal, and like uh to hear or Presbyterian, anything, and to hear people say like I had a similar experience. I don't know, at the end of the day, like we have to remember, and I'm telling myself this in kind of a difficult time in America, but we have to remember there are always other people, sharing some kind of experience with us in this life. And I love found family stories because I think you can find each other. And when you do find each other, just hold on to each other and support each other. And maybe that's how we all get through everything, you know?
That's beautiful. I absolutely love that. Yeah, I agree 100%. I will say there's one sequence in this book that weirded me out in a way that I think was probably intentional, but maybe not intentional. And it's the house on the rock sequence. And that's probably not the one. I feel like I have like megalophobia or something. That place gives me the willies. It has always given me the willies. And I was like, is this when you first get there? I was like, is this that place? Is this that place with the whale? And I like Googled it and I was like, oh God, oh
Have you
man.
been, or is it,
I've
or it just
not.
scares you like in the ether that it exists?
That it exists, any images that I see. I don't think I could walk into the carousel room, the angel room. I don't think I could deal with the sea monster room. Like Pirates of the Caribbean, because you can't see the ceiling.
Yeah, yeah.
I ride it like this. I can't handle large, I just can't do it. Probably some trauma from going to a haunted house when I was too young. But yeah, so it just freaks me out. Um, what made you set it there, other than it is a vastly cool location in Wisconsin?
It is so cool. So I'm really into roadside Americana, and Maeve started like in a city. I did my LA book, but really like every book kind of moving forward is more like there's a lot of roadside America because that's also like that's what I'm really into, and it's also kind of the life that I live for the most part. Is just kind of being on and off the road. But I love Wisconsin in particular. I spent a lot of time there in my early 20s, and then I kept going back. My boyfriend, partner, and I, both of our exes, were from or lived in Wisconsin. So we had both spent time there like before we met each other. And then we were like, we both love it there. So we kept going back together. House on the Rock, I've been to, I don't know, like 3 to 5 times at this. I don't know how many times. It's amazing. It's my favorite place in America. I think it's like it's way up there. It's so weird. It's so American. It's so strange and powerful. And I love it, but it made sense to me that Sophie would just be fucking terrified. So that
Yeah.
was so if anybody's like on the fence, just go to House on the Rock. It's worth it. But it does sound like it would totally overstimulate you and be like overwhelmed. It is overwhelming. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I feel like I have to do it just to do it, but I will spend the whole time like hunched over. I will say there is a sequence where there is spotty power, and I was white knuckling that sequence. I was like, I could not do that place in the dark. I wouldn't. No, it would be too much for me.
It would be actually quite frightening. Because it does feel it's not subterranean, but it feels subterranean. Like there are no windows in most of it, and you're sort of
Oh,
it's on this hillside, so you are sort of going down at times, and the feeling is very strange. Um, yeah, I kind of want to put out at one point like road trip guides for each of my books, like if you want to sort of experience and stay where I stayed, like when I was writing scenes or whatever, like maybe I'll throw something together.
I would love that. I would pay for a digital download of that. I would
Okay,
pay for
great.
it in hard. Yeah, you would have at least one person who buys that because that sounds fantastic. That's awesome. So, we have a few questions we ask to everyone who comes on the show. And some of them are tailored for you, and there's one that's just general. So, what is your favorite zombie or post-apocalyptic story, book, movie, whichever piece of creative outlet you'd like? And you can list more than one if you like.
My favorite post-apocalyptic series, it's terrifying, is the Mad Adam trilogy, Margaret Atwood. So the first one is Oryx and Crake. It's so fucking
I,
scary. It's so
these
scary.
are these are selfish questions because I oftentimes add to my TBR or like my watch list. I've not read this. Well,
Very,
say one
very,
more.
very dark. Oryx and Crake is the first book, but it's the Mad Adam trilogy.
Awesome.
It's one of the most like bleak, disturbing, uh apocalyptic novels I've ever read.
You're speaking my language with that for sure. Uh, the next question might get more challenging, especially if you like films, or maybe if you don't like films. But what is your favorite horror movie? And you can pick a few. I know that's a very limiting question. You don't have to pick just one.
Um, I do watch probably like a worrying amount, The Shining. I watch The Shining all the time. Like
Yes.
every other week, kind of. It's like a calming movie to me. So The Shining
Yeah.
probably has to be my answer. But I'm also really into movies like Crawl and recently Dangerous Animals. I love like big baddie aquatic creature kind of situations.
I haven't seen Dangerous Animals yet, although it's one I need to get to. But I almost wore my Overlook Hotel shirt today, and I wore it for like a recent episode, and I was like, I got to throw on Sutter Kane. It's this close. I'm sad I didn't do it. And I'm sure that you loved that giant like sea monster room in House on the Rock then.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I do. I want to write aquatic horror one day. But I like creature features are like to me so fun and kind of I think Crawl, by the way, is a perfect movie. Nobody talks about that movie enough.
Yeah.
It's
It just hit
amazing. It's like everything that could be going wrong is going wrong in this pressure cooker and it's crazy. And there's a emotional growth.
what you can't ask for more in a story than nonsense and emotional growth at the same time. That's good stuff.
It's Florida. So like what more needs to be said, you know? Hurricane, crawl space, alligators, fraught
Yeah.
parent-child relationship.
Yes,
Let's
yes.
go.
I need that one is at the top of my watch list. I've not seen it. It hit streaming in July or August. It was one of the streaming platforms that I subscribed to, and we did a video listing it out, and everybody in the video was like, "You have to, how have you not seen
It
this
is
film?" And I was like, "I
it's
don't
like a
know."
perfect movie. Truly. I love it.
On your recommendation, I will add after Fantastic Fest wraps next week. I will be watching
Yeah.
that. Awesome. So I know you have another book coming out. Do you want to give a plug to that if you can talk about it?
Yeah. So speaking of The Shining, it's called Headlights. It takes place in Colorado. It is inspired to a good degree by that book and movie. But basically, forgive me, I'm like just learning how to pitch this book and trying
Yeah.
not to, there's like big spoilers in this one. But people keep coming to consciousness on the side of the highway, naked, barefoot, and wearing the skin of a person they've never met before with no memory of how they got there. And
Ooh.
the detective in charge of this serial case has to come back to Colorado to hopefully solve it once and for all. And uh, things get crazy, I guess.
I'm sold. That sounds awesome. And that comes out next year, right?
In June, yeah.
Well, a perfect gift for my birthday. I know you planned it that way.
Happy birthday, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can't wait to read it. That's fantastic. So where can people find you if they want to stay up to date on the paperback release or on Headlights?
I think the best is my Instagram, which is Siege the Moment. I'm not as good on Blue Sky, and I'm not very good about keeping my website updated, but I'll get better about that soon. But yeah, check my Instagram. I have like 9 paperback tour stops coming up, and am throwing a Halloween party in Brooklyn with a bunch like 12 horror authors are doing it with me. So
Wow,
yeah, come out to everything.
that sounds fantastic. Yeah, we'll put all that information in the show notes, and I
Thank
just can't.
you.
I really enjoyed our conversation today. I can't thank you enough for joining me.
Thank you. Me too. I feel like I was like so chatty Cathy over here. So
Oh no,
hopefully I didn't go off on too many tangents.
no, this was fantastic. I really appreciate it. And as always, stay spooky, my friends.